The bailiff's voice echoed across the courtroom as the murmur of spectators settled into a low hush. I sat at the defendant's table, hands folded, my briefcase at my feet, the edge of my old red scarf tucked safely inside. 2 counties away from the courtroom where I once presided, I felt the shift in power like a cold draft slipping beneath a closed door. Across the aisle, Ernest and Livia Calder whispered to their attorney, rehearsing their grief with the precision of seasoned actors. They still did not look at me. Judge Ramirez entered, and we all rose. My parents, if I could still call them that, held their heads low in a practiced display of humility. I kept my eyes on them as we sat again. I wanted them to feel the weight of finally facing the daughter they had left behind. Before any motions were read, I spoke softly but clearly. "If you are listening to this," I said, "I need you to know who they truly are and who I had to become to stand here today. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team of the channel Revenge Pulse, inspired by real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotion, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative." Judge Ramirez glanced at me. "Ms. Calder, your counsel will speak for you shortly." "I understand," I replied, "but the truth deserves oxygen." "Your Honor." Ernest shifted in his seat. "We only came for what was taken from us," he muttered. I leaned forward slightly. "You declared me dead once. Now you want me alive long enough to empty my pockets." A flush crept across Livia's face. "We searched for you for decades." "Then," I said calmly, "you will not mind if everyone hears what you found instead." I exhaled slowly, grounding myself. "Before this begins, tell me, would you forgive parents who abandoned you for money, or would you hold them accountable? Your answer matters more than you know." I was 5 years old when Ernest and Livia Calder walked several steps ahead of me through the Seattle airport. Their voices clipped with irritation. Livia never turned around. Ernest only looked back once. Not to check on me, but to make sure I was still following. Even then, I knew the difference. "Keep up." "Rose," Ernest snapped, "you are slowing everything down." My scarf dragged along the floor, snagging on my shoes. "I am trying," I whispered, but neither of them answered. They led me down a quiet corridor toward the oversized baggage area, far from families hugging and laughing, far from anyone who might notice a small girl trailing behind 2 adults who never touched her hand. When Ernest finally stopped, he pointed to a cold metal bench bolted to the concrete. "Sit here," he said. "Do not move." I perched on the edge, the scarf scratching my neck. "Where are you going to fix the tickets?" Livia said, still refusing to meet my eyes. "Count the luggage until we return." "How many?" My voice quivered. 350, she replied briskly. "By the time you are finished, we will be back." I nodded because nodding was the only thing I had ever been taught to do. They turned away with the relief of people who had finally set down something heavy. I began counting. Suitcases thudded onto the carousel, thumping in uneven rhythms. 1, 2, 3. My legs swung above the floor, too short to reach. A guitar case spun past, then a stroller, then a dented blue trunk. I kept going, my voice growing smaller each time. When I reached 100, the crowd had thinned. By 200, the noise had softened into something hollow. By 300, I could hear my own breathing. At 350, the belt shuddered once and went still. They were not coming back. I stared at the empty carousel as the silence pressed against my ears. My throat tightened. I tried to call for them, but nothing came out. The silence would not let me speak. A security guard eventually approached, his brows lifting when he saw me alone. "Hey, kid," he said gently. "Where are your parents?" Before I could swallow the fear rising through my chest, a man stepped forward from behind a column. He wore a gray coat and wire-rimmed glasses. His expression was steady, as if he already knew the answer to the question. I saw what happened. he told the guard. "She was left here." The guard frowned. "Are you with her?" "Sir." "No." The man crouched down so he was level with me. "But I will stay until someone responsible does the right thing." I looked into his eyes, trying to find the panic or judgment adults usually showed around me. There was none. Only recognition. "My name is Jonas," he said. "You are safe now." Rose. My fingers clutched the scarf tighter. For the first time that day, someone had spoken my name without anger. Jonas did not offer his hand. He simply stayed quiet, patient, refusing to leave me on that bench the way Ernest and Livia had. Jonas stayed with me through every question the officers asked that night. He answered only what he knew and never spoke over me. Whenever someone leaned too close or raised their voice, his tone sharpened just enough to draw a boundary. "She is frightened," he said quietly. "Lower your volume." The officers backed off. It was the first time I had ever seen an adult defend my comfort. When Child Protective Services arrived, a woman in a navy sweater crouched beside me. "Rose, we are going to find a safe place for you. Do you understand?" Jonas stood a few steps behind her, hands in his pockets. His voice was soft. "I will follow wherever they take you. You will not be alone." I did not speak, but he nodded as if my silence was enough of an answer. Weeks passed inside a foster home that smelled of lemon cleaner and old carpets. Jonas visited almost every day. He never brought toys or sweets. He brought presents. One afternoon, as I tried to string words together, he sat across from me at a small kitchen table. "You do not have to talk before you are ready," he said. "Silence is not a failure. Sometimes it is your body asking for room." I stared at him, confused by how easily he seemed to understand things I could not explain. He smiled. "When you feel safe, words will return. If they do not, we will find another way." Jonas became my guardian when I turned 7. The court hearing was brief. Ernest and Livia never appeared. The judge asked Jonas why he wanted the responsibility. "Because she was left," Jonas answered, "and I intend to stay." Those 4 words rewired something inside me. Years later, when I entered law school, Jonas placed his worn briefcase on the kitchen counter. "Take this with you," he said. "It has carried every document I ever relied on. Now it is yours. I cannot." I whispered, "It is too important. So are you." When I graduated, he sat in the front row, clapping louder than anyone else. When I became a judge, he watched the ceremony from a live stream because his health was failing. His smile filled the screen. Then, one quiet morning, Jonas was gone. A small service, a handful of people, the kind of farewell he would have wanted. After the burial, his attorney placed a folder in my hands. Inside was the truth Jonas never boasted about: careful investments, decades of discipline, and a final gift worth $4,800,000. The air left my lungs. Jonas had not been preparing for his death. He had been preparing for my landing. 2 days after Jonas's memorial, the local news aired a short segment about his estate. I watched it once, standing in my kitchen with the volume low. Former foster child turned judge inherits $4,800,000, the anchor announced, as if the number mattered more than the man. I closed the laptop and whispered, "Jonas would have hated this." That was when the knock came. A man in a tan jacket stood at my door, holding a sealed envelope. "Rose Calder. Yes. You have been served." I took the envelope. My pulse stayed steady until I read the names printed on the first page. Ernest and Livia Calder. Plaintiffs. My breath thinned. The complaint claimed Jonas had taken me unlawfully. It insisted they had searched for me for decades. It demanded the entire inheritance, Jonas's house, and damages for their unimaginable suffering. My attorney, Mara Klein, arrived 20 minutes after I called. She flipped through the pages, her brow tightening. They are positioning themselves as grieving parents, she said. This filing is aggressive. They want everything. They never called. I murmured. Not once. Mara looked at me carefully. Do you want to fight this as their daughter, or as a judge who understands exactly what they are doing? I folded the complaint, pressing the crease until the paper bent under my thumb. They declared me dead once, I said. Now they want me alive long enough to empty Jonas's life into their pockets. Mara nodded. Then we fight. I set the envelope down on the table between us. No hesitation. No settlement. A quiet resolve settled in my chest. They wanted a courtroom, I said. They will get one. Mara arrived the next morning with her hair still damp from a rushed shower. She placed her laptop on my dining table and said, If we are going after them, we start with their financials. People who lie almost always leave numbers behind. I nodded. Bring in Dr. Sienna Cho. She specializes in forensic reconstruction. If Ernest and Livia touched anything involving money after abandoning me, she will find it. Sienna arrived an hour later, quiet and observant, her glasses sliding down her nose as she scanned the complaint. They are confident, she murmured. Too confident. That usually means they are hiding something they think cannot be traced. Mara tapped her pen. We need their history from 1995 onward. Sienna looked at me. Are you ready for what we might find? I swallowed. Find everything. By afternoon, my dining table had transformed into a war room. Tax returns, property records, archived banking references, charity logs, microfilm printouts. Sienna moved through them like a surgeon. 2 hours later, she stopped. Her finger rested on a docket number from 1996. Rose, she said. Your parents sued an airline. My chest tightened. For what she read aloud, Ernest and Livia Calder versus Cascadia Regional Airlines. Claim of negligence resulting in the disappearance of a minor child. Mara's eyes widened. They told the airline you vanished because of staff negligence. That is a constructed narrative. Sienna continued scrolling. The case settled quietly. The amount is confidential. But she slid over a scanned mortgage document. A home purchased 1 year later lists a lump sum payment applied directly to the loan. The number matches settlement patterns from that era. How much, I asked. Approximately $280,000, Sienna said. Enough to erase debt and start over. The air in my lungs went thin, Mara whispered. They profited from losing you. Sienna wasn't finished. She brought up a sworn declaration, digitally archived despite the settlement being sealed. This was required for the payout, she said. She rotated the screen toward me. We acknowledge that our daughter, Rose Calder, is presumed deceased. My name, my death. Signed by Ernest and Livia in careful, practiced handwriting. They declared me dead, I said, the words slow, deliberate, not missing, not taken. Dead. Mara touched the back of my hand. We use this. It devastates their entire case. I stared at the signature, my mother's looping cursive above a line that erased me. Sienna closed the file. Rose. This was not grief. This was strategy. I nodded, feeling something old harden inside me. They abandoned me, I said, and then they sold the silence that followed. No one spoke after that. There was nothing left to interpret. The truth was finally in the open. Sienna returned the next morning with a thin folder tucked under her arm. She set it on the table and slid it toward me. There is someone else you need to know about. I opened the folder. A photograph of a young woman stared back, soft eyes, tired smile, posture drawn inward as if apologizing for existing. Mira Calder. Sienna said, she was born 2 years after your disappearance. Records show she lived in the same house your parents bought after the settlement. My throat tightened. A replacement. Mara exhaled slowly. We should speak to her. She may know nothing. But she may know everything. We met Mira in a quiet corner of a downtown cafe. She stood when I approached, gripping the strap of her bag as if it were armor. "You are Rose," she whispered. "I have seen your picture since I was old enough to understand words." I sat across from her. "Did they tell you what happened?" "They said an airline lost you," Mira replied. "That they searched for years. That the world was cruel." Her voice trembled, but nothing added up. "They never spoke about you unless bills were overdue or church wanted an update." I watched her swallow hard. "Last week," she continued, "I was cleaning the attic. I found a box hidden behind old winter coats." She placed the box on the table. Inside were faded slips of thermal paper. "Casino receipts," Mira said. "All from the week you disappeared." Mara leaned forward. They were gambling instead of searching. Mira nodded, tears gathering. "I used to think I was the lucky one, the child who stayed. But staying meant living inside a story that was never true." I closed the box gently. "Mira," I said, "you were not their accomplice. You were their witness." She looked at me with a fragile, hopeful ache. "Then let me help," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed she could. The courtroom filled before I arrived. Word had spread that Ernest and Livia Calder were finally facing the daughter they once declared dead. When I walked in with Mara and Sienna, Ernest stiffened. Livia's mouth trembled, but the tremor dissolved the moment she realized people were watching. Judge Ramirez gavelled the room to order. Mara leaned close. "They will perform. Do not react." I nodded. Ernest rose first when the judge called on him. He clutched a handkerchief as if it were the anchor of a broken man. "Your Honor, we have lived with unending sorrow for over 20 years, he began, voice cracking on cue. "We believed Rose was gone forever. We prayed for closure." Livia dabbed her eyes dramatically. "We were told her body was never found. We lit candles every night. We begged God to return her to us." A few spectators murmured sympathetically. I felt Mara tense beside me. Judge Ramirez asked, "And your claim is that Mr. Jonas Reed abducted her?" "Yes," Livia said, pressing a hand to her chest. "He must have. We trusted airport staff. And she vanished. He stole her from our lives." My jaw tightened. Jonas had given me a life. They had given me an empty bench in an airport. Mara stood. "The defense calls Mira Calder." A wave of whispers rippled across the gallery. Ernest spun around. "Mira." "No," he hissed. "Sit down." But Mira walked forward. She did not look at them. She looked at me, and the truth in her eyes was steadying. After she was sworn in, Mara asked softly, "Mira, what was your life like in the Calder household?" Mira's hands shook, but her voice did not. "It was like living inside a mausoleum with the lights on," she said. "Everything revolved around Rose, the dead sister whose name was spoken only when bills were due or donations were needed." Ernest's face reddened. "Mira, stop this nonsense." Judge Ramirez's tone snapped like a branch. "Mr. Calder, remain silent." Mira reached for her bag and lifted out the shoebox. "They said they spent every dime searching for her. They said they hired investigators. They said they mourned." She opened the lid. "But this is what I found." Mara approached. "Tell the court what is inside." "Receipts," Mira said, voice cracking. "From Jade River Casino. All dated the week Rose disappeared." They were not searching. They were gambling. The gallery erupted into stunned murmurs. Livia lunged forward. "You ungrateful girl," Judge Ramirez struck the gavel sharply. "Mrs. Calder, enough!" Mira looked at me then, eyes bright with grief and clarity. I used to believe I was the fortunate one because I stayed, but staying meant living inside a lie. Her voice softened into something fragile but firm. Rose did not escape them. Rose was freed from them. I inhaled slowly, feeling years of silence shift inside me. Mira lowered her gaze. I am here today because I refuse to keep their secrets anymore. And in that moment, under the fluorescent courtroom lights, we were no longer strangers separated by a story. We were sisters standing on opposite sides of the same truth. Judge Ramirez let the murmurs settle before turning her attention to Mara. Defense. Proceed. Mara stood with quiet confidence. Your Honor, we call Dr. Sienna Cho. Sienna approached the stand, carrying a thin binder. She spoke without theatrics. I reviewed Ernest and Livia Calder's financial history beginning in 1995. Their statements show a sudden debt reversal and a large mortgage payment made in early 1997. Ernest shifted, his jaw tightening. Mara asked, Dr. Cho, what does that indicate? A lump sum. Sienna replied, consistent with confidential civil settlements of that time. Approximately $280,000. Livia's eyes widened. You cannot know that Sienna continued calmly. Additionally, I located a sworn declaration filed with the settlement. It required Ernest and Livia to state that their daughter, Rose Calder, was presumed deceased. She looked directly at them. They signed it. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Judge Ramirez lifted the document Mara handed up. She read it silently, her expression sharpening with every line. Mr. and Mrs. Calder, she said, voice low and controlled. You accepted a substantial settlement by declaring your daughter dead. Yet today, you stand here claiming parental rights over the same daughter you swore no longer existed. Ernest stammered. We were misled. No, the judge cut in. You committed either fraud then or fraud now. Livia's breath hitched. We needed the money. We had no choice. Need, Judge Ramirez replied, is not a legal defense. She brought down her gavel. This case is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am referring Ernest and Livia Calder to the district attorney for investigation into perjury and potential financial fraud. The bailiff stepped forward. Ernest whispered hoarsely, Rose, help us. I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. You chose this path. And for the first time, he understood I was not the child he abandoned. I was the woman who survived him. The weeks after the dismissal moved quietly. Ernest and Livia fought their new reality with the same desperation they once used to abandon me. But the law moved faster than their excuses. Mara kept me updated. I listened, but I did not linger. I had already spent enough of my life inside their shadow. One crisp morning, I sent Mira a message. Meet me at Seattle-Tacoma. Terminal B. She arrived looking uncertain. Her coat pulled close as she stepped beside me near the renovated baggage area. The bench where I once sat was gone, replaced by newer metal seats and brighter lights. Still, the air carried a memory I could feel in my bones. This is where they left you, Mira said softly. And where Jonas found me. I replied, both truths live here. Mira reached into her bag and unfolded a red scarf handmade, carefully stitched. The yarn a deeper shade than the one I once clung to. I wanted you to have this, she said. Not as a shield, just something warm. I wrapped it around my neck. It settled lightly, not choking, not heavy. Thank you, I whispered, for standing with me, for choosing truth even when it hurt. Mira's eyes glimmered. I thought I was the child who stayed, but staying meant living inside a lie. You were the one who got away. I took her hand. Then we walked forward together. We stepped out of Terminal B, leaving behind the ghost of a small girl counting bags and waiting for footsteps that never returned. A month later, I signed the founding documents for the Reed Calder Foundation, dedicated to legal support and guardianship for abandoned children. Jonas would have approved. Mira sat beside me as I signed, the new red scarf warm against my collarbone. If you are still with me now, listening to this story, Let it remind you every child deserves someone who stays, and every voice, even a silent one, deserves to be heard.